Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the third webinar of our Food and Drink Feature Month in association with the Food and Drink Federation, the Food and Drink Exporters Association, DEFRA, UKTI, and the Grocer. My name is Gemma Price, and I am the Content and Community Manager at Open to Export. For those of you that are new to our webinars, Open to Export is a free online community where UK businesses come together to help each other become better, smarter, and more confident doing business abroad. We're proud to be supported by our founding partners, UK Trade and Investment, the Federation of Small Businesses, the Institute of Export, and Yale Group. If you haven't already, please do pop along to opentoexport.com. Food and drink continues to be one of our most vibrant and engaged sectors on the site, where we have excellent food and drink feature pages which are packed with webinars, case studies, guides and live feeds of our food and drink relevant content from our forum, our events listings and our UKTI business opportunities feed. One of the most popular aspects of Open to Export is our discussion forum, which so far has helped businesses just like yours with over 200 food and drink export questions. So if you come away from the session with a burning question, you can post it on our forum and get some free support from the community. Popular topics include how to find distributors, dealing with regulation, and export documentation. Now we have an excellent lineup of speakers for you today. To get things started, we have Hamish Renton, who is one of the leading sector specialists on dairy. Hamish will be giving us an update on dairy exports, and we'll then interview Tim Harrop, the head of collaboration at Lycros Farm, and Simon Mercer, the export manager at the Snowdonia Cheese Company. Together, they have many, many years of experience in this area. Now you can ask questions to our panel at any point using the question box in the control panel in the right hand side of your screen, and we'll get to as many of them as we can at the end. And as always, you can follow the discussion on Twitter using hashtag OTEchat. And finally, don't worry about taking any notes. We'll be recording this webinar and uploading it to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/open to export in the next couple of days, where you can view this and all of our previous webinars on demand as many times as you like. So without further ado, over to Hamish to get things started. Hamish, are you with us?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. What I thought I would do just to position the discussion today is have a look at some of the data about how the UK is doing on exports at the moment, because that will kind of ground the discussion in the product sectors and the markets. So if you look at the attached chart, you can see broadly exports are fairly cyclical. If you look back over the last sort of 5 years or so, the value of exports overall has grown. Fairly obviously, the 2014 figure is not a full year because we're only in the October of the year, but the way the figures are trending, 2014 will continue the trend that we've seen in previous years, whereby we've exported more dairy, and that's got to be good news. It's a big focus for the current coalition government, and there's a lot of people behind the scenes in government, and there's a lot of people in industry working hard to make sure that we export more dairy. Of course, exports are only half the picture. And the UK actually runs a net trade deficit in dairy because we import more dairy than we export. And clearly, sorting out more exports is a big part of solving that. We have enough rain on this island to grow plenty of grass, we create plenty of milk to make much more dairy products. So that's what we're about with all of this work. If we look at the next slide, we can see what we actually export. So if you look at the sort of four main product types, milk and cream is the principal product breakdown in terms of what's exported, but there's also a lot of cheese and curd. And I would encourage exporters to think about curd as well. One of the advantages of exporting curd, clearly, is that it's cash generative. And often, if you have your right market set up, you can be paid before you necessarily have to pay the milk check as well. Whey and powders are big export areas and areas where the UK is increasing, because fairly obviously we've got some access now via the GDT to some of those global markets, and there's plenty of powders from plants such as Westbury being traded internationally. Butter and buttermilk is another area of interest as well. So broadly that's where we are, milk, cream, cheese, curd, and to a lesser extent powders as well. So if we look at the next slide, we can see where it goes. And what I'll do is I'll put on the presentation more data about where we export at the moment. But broadly, the big areas aren't what you think. I mean, sadly, we don't export enough to what's called Western Europe, so the EU 28. And it's an area of big focus to it. If we look at the big areas that we do export to, well, North America is a big area, Sub-Saharan Africa as well, and that tends to be a lot of powder that goes there as well. Asia and Oceania, and if you like, Hong Kong is an entry point for many into the Chinese market. Eastern Europe remains a big area of interest for us, as well as North America. And of course, with the conclusion of the trade treaty with Canada this month, the Canadian market, which has a fondness for UK brands, UK flavour profiles, the Canadian market is very much open for business. If we look at the next chart on there, we can have a little look at sort of cheese exports. So it's around about 12,000 tonnes of cheese. And if you know the cheese industry, the first thing that will strike you is that's actually quite a small amount of cheese that's exported. The good news is it's 15% up on the prior year. So there's some good movement within cheese, and British cheesemakers are getting their exports up and getting their act together quite significantly. So if you look at what gets exported, if you look at territorials, so Red Leicester, Double Gloucesters, there's been a good movement in that. Many of those are speciality products, and they've found very good markets. And cheddar exports, which is bread and butter to many cheesemakers, are up 5%. And a lot of that, there's been some good work, particularly by Wykes. Dairy Crest have had good results in Germany, but also some of the smaller cheesemakers have had very good results indeed. So cheese exports is a very positive picture. And then really to complete today's sort of look at the market, if we look at the next slide, we can have a look at butter. And again, so butter is around about 3,000 tonnes. And then again, that's a big leap on the year before. So we're very pleased with that. But within that, there's been a mix, and obviously there hasn't been as much exported to the European Union. Historically, that's because of a milk price differential between the UK and the continent, which in the reverse of many years, the UK milk price was higher than the continental price, which frustrates exports. Of course, that may well change, and we're seeing farm gate movements pretty much monthly now. So one of the only silver linings of a declining farm gate price is obviously it makes exports more competitive when they're traded internationally. And really, where's butter gone, it's mostly outside the EU, and mostly it's bulk butter, so big 20-kilo blocks rather than consumer packs. So that was just a quick look at the market, and now I'd like to bring in two experts. So I'd like to bring in Tim and Simon, just to have a chat about how they have found exporting. They've been out there at the coalface. So good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Hamish.
Good afternoon, Hamish.
Nice to see you, Simon. Nice to see you, Tim. So perhaps we could start right sort of nuts and bolts, really, and say, maybe take this first question, Tim. In terms of exporting, what do you think the key benefits have been for your business of getting stuck into exporting?
Well, the one key thing you have to look at is the fact that you're spreading the risk. You know, exports are achievable. There are people overseas who are keen to work with you to facilitate any trade. And Mycross Farm now export over 20% of their product. And Michael Heseltine, bless his cotton socks from yesteryear, he often said of engineering companies that they should export at least 30% of their manufacture. And I don't think that's, I think that's a useful target also for food companies to spread their risk.
Simon, do you have a different perspective on that? What would you see as the key?
Oh, Hamish, I mean, I would follow on from that. I think at the end of the day, like all business, it boils down to money. Exporting provides you with an opportunity to expand your channels and therefore spread the risk, so you're not dependent just on the UK market, which is obviously a big plus. And I think depending on the type of products you export, it also gives you the opportunity to build profit, because you can. You know, you're probably exporting a cheese into the luxury imported cheese sector in a particular market, and there's a good opportunity to margin maintain there. So I think, export for commercial benefit is a key thing, you know.
No, perfect. And in terms of the way your business operates, so the way it's structured, its finances, its sort of culture, if you like, the way it thinks, has exporting more changed those dynamics within the business? You want to give us a thought on that, Simon?
I think it has. I mean, the Snowdonia Cheese Company, who I'm currently working for, is I guess, a medium-sized company, and I think exporting has certainly broadened their horizons, which is an obvious thing to say, but I think it gives them more focus, more vitality, more opportunities to learn from the market you're in, because at the end of the day, talking to different people of different cultures gives you new ideas on how to run your business, and obviously new product development and ideas and so on. So, there's some hard lessons in export in terms of commercial opportunity, and also some soft ones in terms of the culture of the business. It improves it, I think.
And Tim, would you echo that?
I'm afraid I have to. Yes, I think the opportunity to connect with people overseas, as I said before, I'm really keen to connect with you as well, and broadening the horizons. Yes, we're on this island, and we have a significant market here, but 60 million people, well, going on towards 70 perhaps, but Europe, there's 500 million people there who are equally interested in cheese culture, and we should be exporting that. And I think within the business, people are interested to see what we actually do overseas, and excited when you return from a market visit to see the product that they've manufactured on shelves in the Middle East, in the Far East, and it just encourages everybody that they're doing a good job.
No, that sounds good. And Tim, let's stay with you. In terms of how you started exporting and how things really started snowballing, what's the story of that? Was it a few baby steps to begin with, or was it always a business that exported? What's the background to the?
I think the situation for Lycos Farm was that they were approached by an overseas buyer, which often happens with small companies in the UK, and they recognised, oh, okay, we can do this business, and it took off. And then over the years, I think people in the business, the Albis family, have appreciated the fact that there are significant opportunities overseas, and they've invested in staff and in exhibitions. And once you get into an exhibition mode, there are so many people around keen to do business, and it just wakes you up to the opportunity. So it's really taken off in the recent years.
No, that sounds good. And Simon, in terms of the story over at Snowdonia, is it similar, or was there a different background, different genesis to export?
Possibly slightly different. I mean, the Snowdonia Cheese Company is a fairly young business, and was focusing on the UK market. And then 2 or 3 years ago, the directors of the company took a strategic decision that to broaden its channels, they'd look at export opportunities, and had a good hard think about it. They were basically doing virtually no export whatsoever, and started with basics, develop a plan and consider it, and then move forward on a reasonably targeted basis. So, I mean, I agree with Tim. I mean, as with a lot of companies, you get opportunities thrown at you. People sort of send you emails saying, "I'd like your product," but you never from overseas, that is, and you never really know whether it's the right thing to do or not. Getting a good plan, I think, is the place to start, and I think that's what Snowdonia did, and it is built from there.
Okay, no, thank you. So staying with you, Simon, just thinking back again, as the Americans would say, exporting isn't a cakewalk. It has lots of obstacles and lots of barriers, and it's difficult, and perseverance pays, and all the rest of it. What were the key barriers, do you think, that exporting has faced in Snowdonia?
Crumbs. That's a big question. I think the most important thing in any sort of sales is you've got to get yourself known. We believe we have a great proposition and a great product, and that's absolutely key. But then you've got to find ways of getting that message across to, as Tim was saying earlier, an awful lot of people out there in the big wide world. And that's not an easy thing to do. It really isn't. So we have made use of trade shows. We've made use of personal knowledge and experience. But it's the most important thing is to get airtime, is to get yourself in front of the people who are going to buy your products. And there's an awful lot of competition out there. So that's the real hard part. Getting airtime with people who might buy your product. I think the logistics and the documentary side of things, which maybe we'll pick up as we go through this session, is another obstacle. But that's something that can be dealt with.
Okay, thanks, Simon. And Tim, are they the same sorts of barriers that you faced?
Yeah, I mean the paperwork issue. There's people there to help for sure. Dairy, you have to have health certificates to move product around the planet, but DEFRA are there to help with animal health, to handhold through if necessary. And then after a few exports, this is outside the European Union I'm talking about, it becomes routine. And your clients are fully conversant with what they require for importation. So between both parties, you can achieve results. And the one word I think came to mind as Simon was speaking there is tenacity. You just have to keep in there and focus. And when you get knocked back, go back there again. It's often the way that it can take several years to break down some barriers, and suddenly the door will open, and you think, well, that was patience is a virtue.
Amen to that.
No, that makes sense, Tim. Well, in thinking about route to market then, in terms of how you get your product into some of these countries, how do you go about finding, selecting, choosing the distributors that you work with in terms of getting your product out?
Yeah, I think the market is fluid. I think in Europe there is a sense a bit more of retailers are starting to deal a bit more direct, and distributors are not getting into the middle of the equation, as it were. But there again, you go further afield, it is the importer distributors who will facilitate the trade into the market and into the retail arena. So there's some people with a lot of experience over the last 10, 15, 20 years, and those channels, to a degree, are quite settled. It's very seldom you'll find somebody brand new pitching in there. There will be somebody with chilled import experience who might go moving from meat, say, into dairy.
And Simon, is that the way you would see it?
Yeah, broadly. I mean, I think certainly our sort of basic view, and the one I would have held, is that you find an appropriate distributor in the market that you're working in, and work with them. Tim is absolutely right. Certainly in Europe, you have the situation where retailers are increasingly wanting to buy direct. I think it does depend on the scale of your business. I mean, if you are a large business selling a lot of cheese, then you probably deal direct. If you're a smaller company, then given the specialist nature of the product you're selling, you're more than likely to deal through a distributor, and it's quite possible that the retailer will actually direct you towards a distributor that they would like you to use. That's certainly my experience. Again, as echoing Tim's comments, I mean, when you're dealing in North America or the Middle East or wherever, then you're more or less bound to deal with a distributor, because that is the way the business is structured. And again, a lot of the distributors have been in business for a long time. So, and I think, in all honesty, I would advocate that if you're a new to exporting business, then you would be better off dealing with an established company rather than perhaps taking a flyer with a new company. You need the experience of people who are out there already.
No, wise words. Okay. Well, we talked a little while ago about the barriers to exporting. But the flip side to that is there is help out there. There are places that exporters and would-be exporters can go in terms of getting that assistance. Perhaps, Tim, you could tell us some of the places you found help and what sort of help it's been and how useful it's been to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think UKTI have to be a key element here. They give you contacts within countries all over the world through the British Embassy, through their commercial teams, and you get trade leads through that avenue. I had a new one come in this week for an Asian contact, which is quite interesting to follow up. Of course, you can always get them to carry out some research to try and understand the particular market and find you some contacts for you to work with. So that's a very useful avenue, I think. Okay,
and Simon, what have you found useful?
Well, all of the above, I think, yes. I mean, the UKTI certainly, as a Welsh company, Snowdonia has also been fortunate to have the assistance of the Welsh government, who are very helpful in overseas markets, and trade shows, I suppose, which again is a UKTI initiative, I think are a very valuable vehicle for companies to explore export opportunities with at the same time minimising the financial risk for themselves.
Sure, no, that makes sense. And without giving away any sort of commercially sensitive information, what are the next steps for you, Simon, in terms of your exporting? Are you looking at more territories or more products or a deeper engagement with your distribution base? What's sort of next in the in-tray on the exporting side?
Well, I think from our point of view, we spent sort of 2 years building up a reasonable distribution system in our target markets, which I have to say is primarily North America and the European Union. And we're at the stage now where really it is about, I guess, pardon the expression, sweating those assets. We want to really build our business with those distributors, get them to take all of our product line, make sure that the Snowdonia is not just for Christmas, if you'll pardon the expression, and we're getting, repeat purchase. So there's a lot of marketing to do. And that's really our sort of our 2015 plan, if you like, is to get behind what we've got and give it the maximum effort that we can afford to do.
Thanks, Simon. And Tim, what's in your in-tray then in terms of growing your export business?
Well, I think focusing on incumbents is key, and trying to build on the business that we already have. But as we've spoken about before, it is a pretty competitive market out there. And what we try and do at Lycross Farm, I mean, we're just 10 kilometres from the village of Cheddar. And so we're producing West Country farmhouse cheddar with a protected designation of origin mark on it from the European Union, which shows that it's authentic and the product's got provenance. Coupled with that, Lycross of our organic hard cheese makers as well. So we've got two very important strings to our bow, which can garner good publicity overseas, and it gives us a distinct edge. And the fact that we're farmers and cheese makers, we play that one pretty well.
Okay, no, thank you for that. I mean, looking forward, if we were talking to a first-time exporter here and they were looking to take some cheese or butter or powders to a new market, what advice would you give? Maybe staying with you, Tim, in terms of which markets, which territories to choose to begin with. What would your advice be?
I've been exporting for coming up to 20 years now, and I think at the outset that government always were promoting the basis if you're new to export, go to the Benelux countries. And quite recently, regrouping, thinking about what we're doing, there are some opportunities coming up again for us in those countries. And it really is, they're really friendly, nearby, and are interested in our products. We're neighbours. That's probably one of the first targets I would go for.
Okay, and Simon, how about you? Where would you start?
I think I'm with Tim on this. I mean, I think between him and I, we're getting for half a century on export, Tim. That's a bit of a.
Oh, you are so much older than me.
Bloody hell, no, come on, unfair. But probably true. I think keep it simple, absolutely. Target on places where there are the minimum risks, both from a dare I say, a political and a financial point of view. Look at Europe, look at the known territories, and focus on those first. Certainly for smaller companies, don't stretch yourself and go trundling three-quarters of the way around the world in the hope of finding a new opportunity, because it'll be complicated and expensive. Keep it simple.
No, very good. Wise words. Okay, then maybe just to finish this segment then, kind of, if you both could think of maybe 3 top tips that you'd give new exporters in terms of either what to do or what to avoid doing, what not to do. Maybe starting with you, Simon, what's your sort of top 3 tips for new exporters?
I think it's almost summarising what we said. I think obviously you need a good product, something that has a USP, something different to talk about, You then need to get yourself a good plan. Don't just charge out there. Think about what you want to do and what you want to achieve. And then when you've done that, think about the resources you need to do it so that you're doing it properly. And then when you've done that, I think Tim mentioned earlier, tenacity, the execution of it. You've got to get stuck in, get behind your products and get out there and sell hard. It's not rocket science, but, that's the bottom line.
Perfect. Thank you, Simon. And then throwing it over to you, Tim.
I don't know if I can pull 3 out of the ether, but the key one for me is, and this is a UKTI session, and it doesn't hurt to mention them yet again. The UKTI have international trade advisors, ITAs, and they have knowledge and experience. And we have a very good lady who comes in to see us on a regular basis, and it's really good because they challenge you. Have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? Can we put a plan in place? And there's all these programs for people new to export or looking to grow their existing business, and these people are there to help and guide you, and I think there's great utility there.
Perfect. Well, look, thank you very much, gentlemen. Please stay on the line. I'd like to bring Gemma back in now, just to see if there's any questions from the audience. Gemma.
Thanks, Hamish, and thank you to Simon and Tim as well. We have had an excellent response from the audience and lots of questions. So I will get through them now. Just a quick reminder before we get started that if you do have a burning question to ask our panel, just pop it in your chat box and we'll get to as many of them as we can. And we'll try to follow up with any we miss after the session as well. So I'd like to start with a question from Alistair. And Hamish, I'd like to take this one to you first of all, actually. So we've not covered off ice cream during the session, and just what is the picture for UK ice cream exports?
The ice cream industry, from a supply perspective, is very concentrated. E.g., there's a very small number of firms produce a very high percentage of total UK ice cream output. And then, on the 80-20 rule, that remaining 20%, I think last time I looked, there's about 3,000 or 4,000 producers. And this can really vary from, basically somebody on farm who has a herd, who has some freezers on farm and makes some sort of local ice cream, all the way up to a medium-sized producer. The UK does have attractive markets for ice cream. It tends to be these smaller, more specialist producers, and it tends to be where there's a twist to the product. So either an inclusion, so there's nuts, or a particular functional flavouring ingredient is one area where we do very well. We're sort of slightly off-the-wall flavours, slightly new flavours. The other area is sort of more broadly in bulk ice cream. Where people appreciate the creaminess of British ice cream, particularly if it's from a Jersey, for instance, where the slightly higher fat levels gives a different mouthfeel to it. So my inclination would be that the markets that we are kind of most prosperous in and we manage to hit our target more frequently are probably the North American markets and some of the more obvious European markets. So as kind of Simon and Tim were saying, the Benelux countries, to a certain extent France as well, are receptive to UK ice cream offers. You
often see specialist ice cream tubs I've seen on international airlines as well. So it's good. You can get into the airline business, and it's good PR. See your product flying around the world. Yeah, I think that's a very good build, actually. Food service more broadly, as well as airlines, is an excellent opportunity to showcase the brand, definitely.
Fantastic, thank you. And I imagine transporting ice cream may have certain refrigeration or transport considerations. Just taking that to your product, Simon, how do you deal with the transport and refrigeration side of things?
It's very straightforward, actually. If, for instance, if you're dealing with a container load business, you need a reefer container which can keep the temperature between 2 and 5 degrees centigrade, and there's no more to it than that. So there are a lot of professional shipping companies or shipping agents who are experienced in dealing with, certainly with dairy products and cheese in particular, who will be of considerable assistance to a new exporter in that sense. There are also opportunities, if you're only exporting smaller volumes, to consolidate with other loads that require refrigeration. So there's plenty of knowledge and experience out there to be had, and companies that are very willing to help. I mean, obviously it comes with a cost attached, but it's a necessary part of doing business.
I think two nuances I'd add there is, one, in terms of consolidation, one of the roles that UKTI has is it can put a coalition together of non-competing companies. So if you're interested in a particular market, one of the services UKTI can do is find out somebody else who's not selling your product line, but maybe a similar product line, same temperature regime. And as Simon was saying, you can share a route. And then secondly, some dairy products you can freeze. Butter, for instance, freezes fairly well. And obviously you can stockpile it and do it in one big load, one big Arctic, for instance, and then temper it the other end.
Interesting, very interesting. And I think that leads us on to another question that we've received from Sarah in the audience. And Tim, I'd like to take this one to you first of all. So obviously moving on from the transport considerations and how you can collaborate, I imagine that there are a couple of challenges with regards to shelf life. Especially when supplying outside the EU, how would you go about tackling those challenges, if there are any?
There's always the opportunity to air freight product, be in market within, say, 48 hours. But if you're going by container shipments, I mean, we have cheddar cheese which have kept chilled down to 2 degrees, is pretty stable, and it gives you a fair bit of time to get the product into Asia, say it's over a month away, and then leaves enough time for distributors import and to get the product onto the shelf. So there are it does work. It does work even for the longest haul.
I see, interesting. And Hamish, just taking that one to you then, and particularly with regards to milk products. So I imagine that there is an appetite outside the EU for UK milk. Does the shelf life pose a challenge, or is that relatively the same thing as Tim said?
I mean, there are, good question. I mean, there are obviously a market for UK milk, but you've got to remember that haulage, ferry costs, etc., can add, a significant number of pennies on a per litre basis to a load. So, for instance, lugging some milk from the docks in Liverpool across the channel to Ireland, or vice versa, is somewhere in the region of 2-3p. If you were in Ireland and you're trying to reach London, say, it's probably 4.5-5p. So not too much trade is done in milk. If we talk about flavoured milk, that tends to be either UHT in large cartons, or it tends to be what we call extended shelf life. If it's extended shelf life, then classically it has production plus 20, 30, 40 days on it. I've seen it go as high as 56. Yogurt, obviously, is shorter, typically a shorter code life. So you're around about 10 days for a fresh yogurt. So that's going to be difficult to get anywhere, frankly, by the time you've sort of got it through the chain and into the distribution centre. But of course, cheese is almost the perfect product to export. And many exporters, they'll send it off when it's a mild or a medium. And by the time it gets to its destination, it's a mature or an extra mature or a vintage. So cheese is very good.
I would challenge back on that, Hamish. I've just taste tested some cheese out in market, and I often thought that you were having that problem where a mild cheddar would have advanced to a stronger flavour. And I saw some cheese and I looked at the flavour profile, tasted the flavour profiles, and I was amazed. And I just actually proved to myself that one, the chill chain was tight and worked, and it actually, we in the sort of cheese industry know that if you keep cheese really cold, it doesn't actually advance that much, and the flavour profile was still there. So I was very pleased to see that.
Yeah, very good. No, I mean, the other thing to say is powder. So milk powder, whole milk powder, skim milk powder, whey powder. It's very, very easy to transport, classically in palicons or one-ton bags. And obviously, it needs a certain amount of care through the chain, but obviously, it's a pretty robust product. And certainly, a lot of our exports are powder, and therefore, that's probably the bulkiest, but in many ways, one of the easier products to get through a chill chain.
Thank you, guys. Some really interesting points there. We have actually had a comment in from one of our audience members, Julian Hughes. And Julian exports clotted cream and has advised that the cream is blast frozen at production. And then the shelf life is circa 15 months, which enables them to manage the production cycles. And obviously the customers then are able to buy in bulk. So thank you very much, Julian from Rodders, for that comment. Just moving on to a different kind of topic now, and Hamish, I'd like to stay with you for this one. We've had Faraz, who's in the audience, ask us, what explains the dramatic growth in our butter exports? Can you shed a little light on that for us?
In many ways, if you think about what butter is, it's effectively driven off the cream price, isn't it? So if you look at what's happened in the UK over the last 2 years in terms of milk price, the appreciation in the milk price has been in the fat. So it's not as if particularly the skim milk part of milk has been much more valuable. In fact, it's been the fat, so it's been the cream that's driven the value. And therefore, what's happened is you've had a UK milk price here, and then a continental milk price that's sort of here. And in this situation, if the UK cream price is above the continental cream price, it's very difficult to export butter. Because obviously when you concentrate it into a ton of butter, all that cream, it's difficult to do. You've got to ship it. You've got a currency differential as well. If it's the other way around, so the UK sort of cream price is below the continental price, classically you'll get more exports. Now, one of the things that countervails that is what's going on with currency and obviously the price of diesel. So you have about 2 or 3 variables, the biggest of which I'd say is the cream price differential. Second would be diesel. The third would be sort of exchange rates. How they interplay classically will help, sort of commodity sales. The other thing to say is that, as more exporters have got more links, more distributors, more wholesalers, more importers, Britain's got its tentacles out. British Dairy in particular has got its tentacles out more than it had. Therefore, it gets involved in more tenders, there's more opportunities to sell. So you've got a couple of factors. The long-term factor is more British dairy is being exported, we're taking it more seriously as an industry, more seriously as a nation. In the short term, you've got the 3 factors of differential milk price, currency and haulage. I don't know whether either Tim or Simon, you want to add anything to that?
No, I confess I don't know too much about butter, but I can see the point that butter or cream availability in the UK is driven by the UK's liquid market. Therefore, it's going to have availability, and then the rest of it is down to price within Europe, which is a function of demand and currency, I guess, as you said, Hamish.
Yeah, very interesting, Hamish. It's a really interesting point, and the way you practically explained it kind of makes perfect sense. So thank you for that. Just moving on now, and looking at the Far East, and I'm going to take this one to Tim first of all. So it's a question from Alistair in the audience, who's looking at the Far East, looking at China, and just wants to know the need for multiple import licenses, how you dealt with that minefield. Do you have any advice for Alistair?
Don't enter it. It is very difficult. There's a lot of administrative work to go on there. and it's one of those places you have to be very, very patient. And I know we've had conversations in the past with Simon, that this whole thing about the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, getting very excited as key markets. Everybody should be going there because there's such growth. But they're actually quite difficult for dairy to enter. So for the minute, we're keeping a watching brief at Lycros Farm, and I can't say that I could add any authoritative detail for Alistair's question.
I think a couple of things for me, just to put on people's radars. UK's delivery partner for China is the China British Business Council. That's CBBC, not to be confused with the Kiddies TV channel. But if folks have a look at it online, there's all sorts of services specific to the Chinese market. So translation, help with packaging, help with logistics, help with commercials, and indeed finding a distributor. So that's accessible, the CBBC is accessible through UKTI. So if you are genuinely interested in China, your first protocol I would suggest is the CBBC. And there's
sorry, Hamish, I would second that big time. And the one element of CBBC is really, really useful is that if you have an inquiry from China, bless their cotton socks, some of them the emails can come in and they look bona fide. But if you forward it to CBBC, they will investigate for you and tell you whether that's authentic or not, because there is a lot of inauthentic inquiries coming out of China, so be careful.
No, I think that's good advice as well. The other thing to say is UKTI runs a variety of conferences, trade show visits, etc. So coming to Irish in China, for instance, there's something called FHC, which is in November, and there is UKTI funding for smaller firms available, potentially, which can take the edge off the cost of the trip. There's a contribution to having an exhibition stand, a contribution to train tickets and hotels. So if you are interested in China, then plug in through that. And then it's worth talking about the Milan Expo as well, which is happening next year. The Milan Expo is sort of every 5 years there's an expo, and it's a world market really. It goes on for sort of 3 or 4 months, and it just happens to be in Milan. So it's not particularly to do with the Italian market at all, because the 5 years after that it's in Dubai, and 5 years after that it could well be in London. Hopefully we're making a pitch to have the expo in London. But that's a very good thing to have in your diary as well, because many buyers and trade buyers, etc., will be descending on Milan. And there's a British pavilion in Milan. It's going to be a fantastic creation. It looks like a beehive, if you can visualize it. And there's lots of places for people to get stuck in. There'll be help there. There'll be all sorts of things. So Milan next year is certainly something to put on people's radars.
Thank you, Hamish. And yes, I've seen the beehive, and it is very, very impressive. I think that Oh, sorry. I think that your answer there also helped out Mike and Chris in the audience, who asked for, is there a one-stop shop for China? And it sounds like CBBC may just be that, or UKTI. That's all the time we've got. All the time we have. So
one last thing, Gemma. Can I make one shameless plug? There is called the Dairy Exporters Group, and it meets every 6 weeks, and it meets in London at the offices of Dairy UK in 97 Baker Street. That's open to anybody. You don't need to be a Dairy UK member to attend. And effectively what there is a changing cast of people and speakers, and people share case studies. There's good experience there. There's all the details of all the funding. And if an issue crops up, like the Russian export ban or the brief cheese export ban we have with China, that's often a forum where the very latest information is given. So if people look at the Dairy UK website, there's details on that there. Or if people want to drop me an email, I'll certainly plug them into that. But that's certainly a very good use of your time.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hamish. And it looks like we're just overrun by a couple of minutes, so I do apologise. So you can watch all of our food and drink webinars on YouTube. We have a vast library of them now. We're building them up week on week. So if you do want to pop along to youtube.com/open to export, you will be able to watch them all there. And there is free help, support and conversation at your fingertips at opentoexport.com. Becoming part of the community is free and easy, only takes a couple of moments. And then if you need to tap into some advice, some guidance, speak to Hamish or get clarification on any question you have about your exports, just post it on our discussion forum or tweet us at Open to Export to get an answer from the community. And finally, don't miss the next webinar. I'm very aware that a lot of you won't be in the beer industry, but our next webinar is a week today, and it's how to export beer. So very similar format to this one. We'll be hearing from the British Beer and Pub Association, and also looking at the experience of 2 leading British beer exporters. So we're right out of time, but thank you very much to everybody for staying with us for that extra minute or two, and thank you to Hamish, Simon and Tim for your time this afternoon. See you on the next one. Bye bye.